Hello, everyone. Captain Troy Handsome of International Rescue. Please state the nature of your emergency. We're going to watch these Daggerheart videos. I've got a few lined up here. How to play Daggerheart, how to make a character in Daggerheart. But the first one I want to watch came out 3 weeks ago from now. Right now it's October 10th, 2024. It's talking about how the Daggerheart pre-order is live now. And honestly, I should have hopped on this. Here we go.
In play, it felt so good.
Everybody's engaged at the same time.
The hope and the fear mechanics are a wild role-playing ride.
The game is called Daggerheart, our own fantasy tabletop RPG that we've been developing. It's a unique 2d12 dice rolling system that ensures that every roll of the game has some sort of impact on the game itself.
Daggerheart really fosters that collaborative roleplay aspect.
The way that character building lets you do your own thing and organically be like, I'll take a little of this, a little of that. I've never seen a party like the one I just played.
Daggerheart invites you to imagine a more diverse world where you can be an unlikely combination of things.
I would say meow, because I was a kitty. Every time I do something, I'd be like, I was like, meow.
When you're playing with hope and fear, there's a natural rhythm to the game.
Mounting fear, just stacking up and knowing that it could drop at any moment.
It's, oh, we've had a lot of fear build up and now we are gonna get punished. The tactileness is really exciting for me.
I'm excited for the cards.
Having the art on the cards unlocked the backstory I was creating for the character a little bit.
I just feel very represented in this game.
I would absolutely play again. Daggerheart is fun as hell to play.
It's so fun.
I absolutely love Daggerheart.
It's going to be something real special, and it's just the beginning.
All right, for those of you who might not be familiar, basically developed by Critical Role based off of existing systems. It is their attempt to, have access to a fantasy style TTRPG that isn't Dungeons and Dragons, considering just how, we'll say how corporate Dungeons and Dragons can be sometimes. So this will provide an extra layer of safety, depending on how you look at it. But let's start with the introduction.
Hey everybody, my name is Matthew Mercer.
And I'm Spencer Stark.
And we are inviting you here to this video to learn how to play
Yes,
Daggerheart, a new RPG
because of Wizards of the
currently in
Coast.
development.
So
Imagine.
Get into the basics.
Sorry.
Just
Critical Role with their 2.31 million subscribers, 400,000 views on this video. Imagine.
want to remind all of you.
You can
this game
imagine.
is
I
now
don't have to
currently
finish that
in open
sentence.
beta. So things discussed
This
in
way,
video
they
may
can play it
change,
safe in
shift,
case something
go
else happens
away,
down the
be
line.
added to, and that's part of the process of making a game.
Indeed. To learn more and even join our open beta playtest, go check out daggerheart.com. So dive in, break the game, tell us what works, what doesn't work, what basics.
Sorry, I want to jump ahead. Because, it's beyond the beta, it's
Rally
released
dice
now,
are
or
sort of
ready
the
for
bread
pre-order.
and butter for Daggerheart. They consist of 2 different colored 12-sided die.
They gotta be different colored, that's
Die
important.
And your fear die. Now you choose which is which, and for us, we're using this brighter colored one as our hope die, and this kind of darker red colored one as our fear die.
Anytime your GM asks you to make an action roll, you'll roll both your hope die and your fear die, and you add them together along with any relevant modifiers represented by little tokens like this.
Oh, you applied at
Yes,
Wizards of the
tokens
Coast?
can also be coins or
Yeah.
beads, or you can just do the math in your head, but it helps to have these little representations right, there
Right.
next to the dice you roll to do the
That's how I feel about those
Then you
tech
tell the GM
companies
your
that I
result
wanted to work
along
for
with whether
Google.
Your hope die or your fear die rolled
No,
highest.
Amazon.
For example, let's say Travis is playing Bertrand Bell.
I mean, I
and is
technically work
making
for
an
Amazon
agility
now,
roll.
but...
He has a +1 to his agility trait, and he ends up rolling a.
Oh, I'm sorry,
9
there
on
are
his hope die
captions.
and
That's
a
my
4
bad.
On his fear die, plus the 1. He'd add all that together and then tell the GM that he got a 14 with hope.
Yeah. Now, if a 14 meets or beats the difficulty decided by the GM, he succeeds on his agility
It's nice
roll,
because it's a
and he also gains 1 hope,
it's a
rolling with hope.
two-dimensional
Every time your hope die is
role.
higher, you
You're
gain
trying
hope,
to
which is
meet
a liquid resource
or
your
beats
character
the
can spend
AC,
to aid allies or
but you're also
others.
hoping theoretically that your
Sometimes
hope die
character might
ends
have
up
an
rolling higher
experience
than the
that
fear
can
die,
Further modify an action roll in their
instead of
favor.
just a single roll.
Maybe your character has a haggler as an experience when trying to negotiate with a shopkeeper, or expert herbalist when.
I'll
looking
plug
for
this right now.
medicinal
I am
plants.
looking for people to
So
play
you can spend
Daggerheart
that
with
hope
me, so
before
if
the
anyone wants to
roll
play
and describe
Daggerheart with
how
me,
that
let me know.
experience helps you, and then add its value to your roll. You add it all up, and if it meets or beats the difficulty score, you succeed. But your hope and fear die influence what
I should
happens
probably pre-order
next.
it then.
Indeed, if you succeed with hope, you get what you want, and you gain 1 hope. You can spend that later on.
You can use
If you
fancy chips
succeed
for this, which
and
is
roll with
nice.
Fear, you get what you want, but it may come with a
Then the
consequence
DM, like
and
Matthew
a
Mercer
complication.
here, will get a
Additionally,
fear
the GM
token.
takes a fear token. A liquid
You know me,
resource
I'm
the
all
GM
about
can
those
use
liquid
to affect the story
resources.
both in and out of combat, but we'll cover that later.
If you fail with hope, you don't get what you want and will likely face consequences, but you still gain a hope. And if you fail
That's
with
nice because
fear,
it'll help you,
don't
kind of
get what
bounce
you
back
want,
maybe.
You may suffer major consequences. Additionally, the GM takes a fear token.
Undesirable, but
if you
these things
roll
happen.
doubles
They
on
want to
2
focus
dice,
on the
you get a critical
storytelling
success, which
aspect,
means you get
and
exactly
this
what you
kind of
want,
helps
you gain a hope,
facilitate
you
that.
clear a stress, and possibly some other cool benefits alongside it.
Yes,
Well,
I'm
now that we've
excited for the
explained
stress
basics of
mechanic.
the
I've seen
duality
this video
dice,
before, but
let's,
when we
lightly
get back
skim
to
the
it.
character creation process. For a deeper dive into character creation, check out our Daggerheart character
I do have the
creation
video queued up
where
over
I sit
here. We'll
down
see
with
if we get
Travis
to it tonight.
Willingham and make Bertrand Bell, which is linked here.
But for the purposes of this video, we'll give you a brief overview. Our character classes are Bard, Druid, Guardian, Ranger, Rogue, Seraph, Sorcerer.
I bet Ranger
Warrior.
here is way better than in any form
Every
of
class
D&D.
has one or more class features, which are spells and abilities that are unique to each class. Like the Rogue, for example, has a thing called Cloak, which allows them to move into a space where no enemies can see them and be effectively invisible as long as they don't move or attack.
Nice.
Each class also consists of
All right,
the
maybe I
meaning
wanna
of 2
play Rogue.
domains, which are like symbolic themes. Through these 2 domains, you pick and choose what abilities you want for your character by taking domain cards at character creation and every time you level up.
These domains are Arcana, the domain of innate or instinctual magic; Blade, the domain of weapon mastery; Bone, the domain of swiftness and tactical mastery; Codex, the domain of intensive magical study; Grace, the domain of charisma and enchantment; Midnight, the domain of shadow and secrecy; Sage, the domain of the natural world; Splendor, the domain of life and
I
death;
played that board game.
and Valor, the domain of protection.
I like
So,
Valor
for example,
Bards.
the Bard calls upon the charm and magnetism of the Grace domain, along with the lore and magic of the Codex domain. And if you want to cast a spell from a domain card you have, typically you'll have a spellcast roll. This works just like an action roll, but uses your spellcast trait that you can find on your subclass foundation card.
In Daggerheart, your base character traits are agility for things like sprinting, leaping.
I do like the
maneuvering,
traits.
strength
You'll see
for
the
things like
improvement
lifting,
over something
slashing,
like Dungeons
grappling,
and Dragons here.
Finesse, which is used for like hiding, tinkering, or fine motor control. Instinct, which is for like navigating, perceiving, and sensing. Presence for charming, deceiving, and performing. And knowledge for analyzing, recalling, comprehending.
So not to be reductive, but you can imagine that this is dexterity, strength, dexterity, wisdom, charisma, intelligence. There is no constitution, which I appreciate the move for. Discussion for another time, perhaps. But you got the speed and you've got the fine motor controls versus like just speed, because dexterity in something like Dungeons and Dragons kind of has. I think this is a good move personally, especially separating Constitution, which is typically set to health, which
Now
I think
let's talk
Sorcerer
about
should
hit
have
points and
if you
stress.
stick with D&D 5th edition.
In Daggerheart,
I think it should be based on Constitution, not charisma, because your magic comes from your body. But anyway, I really like how the health works. Let's see how it
You will
works.
fill in or mark a certain number of these hit points based on your character's damage thresholds. So if you take minor damage, you mark 1 hit point. For major damage, you mark 2 hit points.
This
and
makes
for
it so
severe
that like
damage,
the
you mark 3
specific
hit points.
Whenever you
numbers
take
in
damage,
great
simply
detail
compare
don't.
that damage amount to your character's
Yeah,
damage thresholds.
it's
Mark
easier.
your hit points.
There's less math involved.
For
It's
example,
just a
if a
less than
rogue
greater
of
than,
1
then add
has
1, 2, or
15
3
damage
ticks
coming at
in the
them,
boxes.
that would be just over their severe damage threshold. So they would mark 3 hit points.
If you ever take damage below your minor damage threshold, you take a stress instead of damage. Now, stress is also a resource that your character can endure to carry out certain uncanny feats or class abilities. But you gotta be careful. If you should ever need to mark a stress, but you can't because they're all marked, you mark a hit point instead.
Evasion represents your ability to avoid being hit by an attack. So when the GM makes an attack roll against a player, they roll 1d20. They add any modifiers and see if the result meets or beats this number. If the attack hits a player, the player can choose to mark armor slots to reduce the incoming damage by their armor score.
For example, let's go
Yes.
back to our level
Armor
1 rogue that has 15
feels more
damage coming at them.
important
If they have an
than
armor
just
score
an
of 3,
addition to
like if they
AC.
have leather armor, they could choose to mark one of their armor slots and reduce that damage to 12, downgrading that severe damage into just major damage.
So then it's just less than
Means they mark
14,
2 hit points
more
instead
than
of 3.
9.
They can always
And 2
choose to
instead of
mark
3.
more than one armor slot if they need to reduce the damage by more as well. And you can, of course, get those armor slots back, but you have to do it by repairing your armor during downtime.
I'm so excited for the
Well, let's go
downtime
ahead and talk
changes.
about game masters.
Changes as if this were different. Downtime actually feels
So, setting
useful in this
appropriate
game. No
difficulty
offense to
values
5th
for your
edition.
Players is a time-honored tradition for many game masters. And when it comes to Daggerheart, a general good rubric to follow when setting difficulty values is a range of 5 being very easy, like extremely easy, up to 15 being your standard average difficulty, all the way up to 30 and more being nearly impossible.
You should also be aware of the circumstances surrounding action rolls because they may grant advantage or disadvantage. For example, maybe you're attempting to lift a broken carriage out of a muddy ditch in the pouring rain. And if that's the case, the GM may impose disadvantage on the strength roll to do that. This situational modifier is represented by including 1d6 with the action roll. With advantage, you add the sum of the d6 to the roll. If you have disadvantage, you subtract the value from the roll.
So, I really like this. Sorry to pause this real quick, but those of you who watch my D&D here on twitch.tv/Captain Troy Handsome, you know that I don't allow channel points to be spent on granting advantage or disadvantage because in traditional 5th edition for Dungeons and Dragons, when you get advantage, it's like, you take the higher of the 2 rolls, but sometimes that roll doesn't do anything because it's not higher. It feels like a waste. That's why I let you all use channel points to bless players instead, because like advantage here, you add a d4 to your roll. Honestly, I should really just incorporate this disadvantage. Like this is, everyone says advantage on average adds like 2 point something to a roll or something. I don't remember the exact number, and disadvantage removes that, but this feels better. And so that's why I have the bless mechanic in my campaign streams. I like that idea of points, right? Yes. And fun fact, for those watching live, just, catch our stream on Friday and bless a player while you're at it.
Instead, always remember that at any time, a player can give another player advantage on an action roll by spending 1 hope and describing how they're aiding their ally.
This one's
Now let's
nice.
talk a little bit about how combat works.
Blessing all the players. Yes, each player can have 1 or 2
Combat in
blesses
Daggerheart
depending on the campaign.
It's designed to be a free-flowing narrative experience with minimal stop-downs and a multitude of possibilities for theater of the mind and map-based content.
Which is nice.
When you want to make an attack, you'll first ask the GM if
So
it's
I wanna talk about that real quick, because for those of you who don't know, Critical Role is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, live play TTRPG. Someone's gonna be commenting in my comments on the YouTube about this. I actually don't watch Critical Role yet, other than on if you have Prime Video. For those of you who have an Amazon Prime subscription, please watch The Legend of Vox Machina. It is their first campaign made into an animated series. But the reason why I bring this up is because he mentioned
narrative experience with minimal stop-downs and a multitude of possibilities for theater of the mind and map-based conflict.
So it airs on Twitch on Thursdays. What's today? Isn't today Thursday? It airs on Twitch like right now. Or a little bit later. And the thing is, it also shows up as a podcast like the day or two after. Some people, you mentioned I should watch it. I'll add it to the list. Yes, please do. Actually, let me snooze this next ad. I'd be game to watch it together. I'm always game to rewatch The Legend of Vox Machina. But yeah, they do Theater of the Mind. And so they do map-based conflict while they're there. But, Theater of the Mind, of course, is technically different, but for people who are listening to the podcast, it'll be easier for them to kind of visualize this because they're only listening. They only have the audio. They don't have the visual. So what they try to go for here, as you'll see in this next section, how it translates to either your specific feet or meters representations to the words that the DM will use.
When you want to make an attack, you'll first ask the GM if it's in range of your weapon. So melee range means that you're within touching distance of the target. Very close is anywhere from 5 to 10 feet away, or the shortest length of a game card when measured on a map. Close is between 10 and 30 feet, or about the length of a standard pen or pencil. Far is between 30 and 100 feet, or the length of a standard piece of paper. And very far is between 100 and 300 feet, or anything beyond the length of a piece of paper that's within the...
So a few notes here. This kind of simplifies it. Just like if you remember what we saw with the health, the way that hit points work, it's got the thresholds. And only when you're within a threshold do you dock 1 health, 2 health or 3 health, and you can reduce the damage you take below a threshold and take less health damage. Just like that, we have the thresholds here. We've changed it like 30 to 100. That way, unlike in Dungeons and Dragons where you have spells that could be anywhere from like up to 60 feet, up to 30 feet, up to 120 feet, this one kind of like, it adds those thresholds, which is nice. And a fun aside for those of you who watch my other YouTube channel or this Twitch channel right here, we talked about video game patents last, like a few weeks ago. They're using pieces of paper to like mark on the map and figure out the distances between things, but there is an unofficial, unspoken rule that some of the people who take in the patent applications, like for these video games and stuff, right? Like say for Nintendo, if the number of lines of the specific claims at the end of the patent application are longer than a sheet of paper, they will usually just hand wave it through. Or so I hear.
If it is in range, make an action roll and add any relevant modifiers. If the roll meets or beats that creature's individual difficulty score, it hits. Now simply roll your damage dice and add their values together.
Creatures also have minor, major, and severe damage thresholds, just like player characters, and a variable amount of hit points and stress, but they don't have armor or evasion scores like player characters.
So they can't use the armor to reduce the damage below a particular threshold. And then, of course, they wouldn't do their rolls
Now for you GMs
for
out
evasion.
there, if you're rolling to see if a creature hits a player character, you simply roll a d20, add the relevant modifiers in that monster's sheet, and see if it hits that player's evasion score. If it hits, roll for damage, and the player determines if they'll spend armor slots to reduce it or how many hit points they have to mark thereafter.
Once again, this is a fantastic way to make armor more useful. In Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, armor basically just it makes a number bigger. But choosing selectively to dock your armor slots so that you can reduce damage below a threshold and take less damage to your health points is really nice. And once again, this will feed into later when we talk about how downtime's actually useful in this game and how you can use downtime to recover your expended armor slots.
Now, if your players are entering into a combat that will last for more than 1 or 2 turns, your GM may place an action tracker on the table. When an action tracker is out, players add a token to it whenever they make an action roll. Players will continue to make action rolls in combat until they fail and/or roll with fear, which then allows the focus to shift to the GM to make what's called a GM move.
Now a GM.
So before they talk into this, you know that combat can drag in Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. It can take upwards of, if you have a DM who doesn't streamline it in the way that I like to do, you can have combat and be stuck in there for 2-3 hours waiting 10-15 minutes between turns, what feels like 10-15 minutes, because someone else is taking a turn, someone else is taking a turn. What they're talking about here is because people are adding all the player turns are happening essentially before the enemy makes a move. So there's not this like you all are doing the player stuff and then enemy stuff will happen when they fail a roll or they succeed on a roll or fail a roll, but the fear die is higher than the hope die.
With fear, which then allows the focus to shift to the
And
GM
then it switches to the GM.
Now a GM move is literally just the GM taking a turn. So after a player rolls with fear and/or fails an attack roll, the GM then has the opportunity to spend any number of action tokens from the tracker and activate that many enemy combatants.
Now this makes it even, but it kind of like balances it in a way. The players all take their turn. Like it kind of shifts it so it's not like player, 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 DM, player, 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 DM. Instead, it could be player, 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 DM, 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 or player 6 times, DM 6 times, because you use this to determine how much time the DM will take.
Now I've turned into resources
Or GM,
for me.
as they say.
After the GM turn is resolved, play then passes back to the players.
Anytime, GMs can also spend 2 action tokens to gain 1 fear token. Remember those? How every time your player characters roll with fear, the GM collects a fear token? Well, here's where they factor in. At any point during combat, a GM can spend 2 of the fear tokens accrued during a session to make a GM move without needing the players to roll a failure or with fear.
Additionally, GMs can spend fear tokens to activate special abilities of adversaries, or generate action tokens for themselves, or make particularly big and dramatic GM
Like
moves.
legendary actions and other things in 5th edition that you all might be
Terror
familiar
for
with.
Death in Daggerheart is a real possibility.
All right, I'm very excited for this portion. We'll talk about this for those of you watching live in just a moment. Those of you watching in the future, this will be seamless. I'll see you all in a bit.
but the system offers players 3
Back
options
to character
choose from
death.
when the character marks their final hit point.
The first option is called Blaze of Glory.
Ah, yeah, here we
This
go.
option lets your character, you guessed it, die in a glorious and heroic fashion, where they take one final action that will be an automatic critical success before passing into the great beyond.
Then there's the ever-popular Avoid Death and Face the Consequences, where your character drops unconscious and cannot take any actions until they get at least 1 hit point back. When this happens, you roll your fear die, and if it's equal to or under your level, you gain a scar, which means you permanently cross out one of your hope slots.
And finally, there's Risk It All, our personal favorite, I believe, which leaves it all up to chance.
Yeah,
You
if you
roll
like
your
to
duality
gamble, you roll the
If your
dice.
hope die is higher, you stay on your feet and clear an amount of hit points and or stress equal to the value you roll on your hope die. But if your fear die is higher, you immediately cross through the veil of death. Now, if the duality dice are tied, which once again is a critical success in Daggerheart, you don't just stay on your feet, you also clear all of your hit points and stress, renewed and ready to go right back into it.
Now that we've covered all the stuff you can do in combat,
Yeah, so as a quick reminder, we're going to go over this. Blaze of Glory means you know you will die, but at least you know you will absolutely succeed on what you're trying to do. You know, hold up the collapsing building so that everyone can escape, or deliver the final blow to defeat the enemy, but you die yourself too. For those of you who like self-sacrifice, and I know at least one of you in here does, I gamble responsibly. Well, in that case, perhaps then something like Avoid Death, Face Consequences. You're not, okay, I'm down for the count. But at least I know I can still live to fight another day, and Risk It All, their personal favorite, because it's kind of like the stressful, death saving throws in D&D 5th edition.
let's touch on some of the stuff you can do during your downtime.
Oh, I'm so excited for this. Downtime is so good in this
If you
game.
take a short rest in Daggerheart, you can spend about an hour doing 2 of the following options.
You've got
You
choices.
can tend to your wounds or another player's wounds, clearing
Erase
1d4
that
hit
marker
points.
off of your
You
sheet.
can blow off some steam and clear 1d4 of
Erase
stress.
that set of markers off
Spend
your
time
sheet.
mending your armor or another person's armor and clear 2 marked armor slots.
Like, you know, these people, again, they have basically jump-started the craze that TTRPGs have for this narrative storytelling. As a disclaimer, not every DM is Matthew Mercer. Not every player is going to be like the voice actors who are here, but you can imagine that if you're mending someone's armor slots, mending your own armor slots, think of the storytelling that is involved there. And of course, you know, you got your hit points, you have your stress, which think of it as like a different alternative, more granular version of the hit points, because of course, when you accrue enough stress, which happens when you, like, you know, you take damage. If you remember from the hit point markers that we were talking about earlier, over here, if you take damage that is less than the threshold, you'll take stress instead. But then when you accrue enough stress, then you take a hit point mark of damage. So, you know, this is another one of those tracks.
Or you can simply spend the time preparing yourself for the path ahead and gain a hope.
If you're able to make camp and relax for a few hours,
So yeah, you gain a hope, which of course has its uses. So again, you pick 2 of these. It's a lot better than the traditional in 5th edition for Dungeons & Dragons, the short rest. You know, it's kind of like just, you know, you can choose to expend some hit die and restore health. There isn't the more granular stress. Armor doesn't have this dimensionality to it that allows you to have expended slots to reduce incoming damage below a threshold and take less hit points. Then it's really kind of just like you can roll hit dice. If there's a bard in the party, you got Song of Rest. Maybe one of you can identify an item, a magic item, if you hang out long enough with it. But so this is nice. Yeah, you get to pick 2 of these. So imagine this. Let me set the stage for you all watching in the present and the future. You're at the campfire, hanging out for a bit after a long battle. You took a lot of like hit points and damage as the tank of the party. So one of the first things you'll do is clear some of the hit points. You'll go ahead and roll the d4 and erase. You rolled a 2. That's very nice. You'll erase 2 of the hit points that you had marked out. Then you have the other mage in the party. You and her have really good rapport. You've actually been really good childhood friends. She, while not at the front of the battle, accrued some stress. She may have taken, she may have been victim to a few pot shots that the enemies may have lobbed her way. So she'll go ahead and clear some of the stress. She'll roll a d4. She clears 4 stress. So she'll erase them from her sheet. And then, for your second choice, you're going to choose mend some armor slots. You're not going to choose to mend your armor. She actually has been gifted armor. You gifted her armor, and you're going to choose to mend those armor slots because she did use that to kind of reduce some other shots. Perhaps one of the enemy wizards had like weaseled its way in and kind of like got a really good shot in on her. And she had to use her armor slots, even though, as a magician, the spellcasters come in different varieties. So she used her armor slots to reduce that damage down below the threshold and took less health as a result. And that way, you can just like say, like basically you call her over and you'll say, Melody, why don't you hand me that armor back? You'll say, what? Am I not worthy of the armor anymore? No, it's not that. It's not that. Here. I'm sure you can fix it yourself, but let me fix that for you. And you take the armor in your hand. Your hands might accidentally graze her hands, and then you go ahead and get to work mending the armor. All right, so this is how you're going to want to do it. What you're going to want to do is you're going to take the oil over here. You're going to rub this clockwise, then counterclockwise into these leather portions. And as for the more metallic portions here, and you pull out a bottle of your own. This is the last bottle of this, I was like, but this is the good stuff. You'll want to, if you ever find yourself back in North Haven, what you're going to want to do, you want to find Similian. Similian is my go-to guy when I'm in North Haven, and he gets me the best oil and the best this right here. And you basically show Melody how to polish the armor and mend those armor slots back. As for Melody's second choice for her short rest, perhaps she's been a little discouraged. She's got the new armor, a gift from her childhood friend, whose hands grazed hers as she handed the armor over. She's just trying to impress him, and unfortunately, she hasn't been doing what she feels to be a good job for this. So she's going to go ahead and prepare and get a hope token that will hopefully come in useful down the line.
And choose two of the following. Clear all marked hit points, clear all marked stress, fully mend your armor, clearing all marked armor slots, or do this on an ally. You can prepare and gain 1 hope, or you can choose to prepare with 1 or more members of your party and instead take 2 hope each.
Ooh.
Lastly, you can work on a project. It takes a substantial amount of time, like deciphering an ancient codex or crafting a new weapon. The GM will assign this project a countdown, and each time you work on this project, you tick down that countdown until the project is complete.
Now, when you're
Okay, so you had mentioned about how you can basically, the whole team can fully heal if done right. That is true. If you are still, if you are in the process of a short rest, depending on who's been taking stress and who's been taking actual hit points of damage, who's been using their armor, yeah, there is that dynamic to it. But of course, as long as you survive till your next long rest, you can clear all hit points and stress, all stress and armor slots.
Or crafting a new
over above, during a long or short rest, you can swap domain cards in your loadout with any domain cards in your vault. This is useful because you can only have 5 domain cards in your loadout at a time, but you really don't have to worry about that until higher levels anyway. I think that's it.
I think that's all.
I think that wraps up our quick and dirty overview of the Daggerheart rule set as it currently sits.
This was an open beta at this time.
But
I'm sure there have been
changes
changes since then.
Dive in, play it out for yourself, and kind of give us your feedback on how you feel about it.
Yeah, we're really excited because the game is in a state where we can actually take the feedback that you're giving us and implement it across the game. We're opening the beta.
Okay, so yeah, this is more beta stuff. Let me take us to the other screen. Those of you watching in the future, this won't be long. I'll see you over there. All right, let's get right into the character creation video.
It's pretty great. So you're now at 7 hit points with 4 armor slots.
This is the best character you've ever seen. You can just say it.
So of the classes
they
we
have
have
Pokemon
here,
One?
just
Nice.
probably go through these first for people that are here.
Okay.
We have the Bard, the Druid, the Guardian.
Gotta make a
Ranger,
bard for
the
sure.
Rogue,
Guardian's
the
tempting.
Seraph, the
Make a
Wizard.
ranger.
We have the
Definitely gonna make a
Sorcerer,
seraph.
which is
Definitely a sorcerer. Yes, he's definitely got magic in his
Pretty
blood.
sure that's not the case.
Yep.
We have the Warrior, which uses Blade and Bone, which I think kind of leans more in the direction of your build. But you have a few different options here. If you
Don't
want
tell me a sorcerer. Yes.
Okay, so I want to show you all
Magic
something on
in
the
his
picture
blood.
here.
Sure
Do
that's
you remember
yeah.
those?
the Warrior.
You can see these symbols here, like the nature one. You can see the the bone that he was saying. The bones up here for Ranger too. Like those different. Think about it like Magic the Gathering. How you have the 5 colors, but there are these different guilds that take from 2 different colors and basically have different play styles based on the colors
Warrior,
they've chosen.
which uses Blade and Bone, which I think kind of leans more in the direction of your build. But you have a few different options here. If you
Don't
wanna
tell me
go
what
with
to
them.
do, Matt Mercer.
I'm not telling you what to do, but you have options here. Where do you think Bertrand sits in here?
I think it is probably a warrior. I love seeing how sorcerer has midnight and also the rogue has midnight.
Each class is where two different domains kind of overlap.
Intersect.
And they all kind of intersect in a circle for the base game. Which
I think it would be warrior.
Okay, cool. All right, now that we've got the actual character class chosen for Bertrand Bell, now we get to work out the foundation you choose. Now, the foundations are kind of the various paths, the various subclasses you can take, and the foundation is the initial kind of level 1 card of that subclass. So the two foundations you have to choose for a warrior, you have the Call of the Brave or the Call of the Slayer. The Call of the Brave enables you to stay brave-faced and endure in the face of true danger. The Call of the Slayer gives you some benefits to actually slay things a little nicer. So if you want to take a look at those and choose what you think best fits Bertrand.
Let me look at this real quick here, because I didn't look at this in more detail. When Stuckham and I first watched like this video back in March, we kind of just let it play through. When you fail a roll with fear, you gain a hope. Once per long rest before you attempt something incredibly dangerous or face off against a foe who clearly outmatches you. Describe what ritual you perform in preparation to make to clear 2 stress and gain 2 hope. Nice to prepare. That's cool. As opposed to Call of the Slayer, on a roll with hope, you may choose to place a single 1d6 Slayer die on this card. Instead of taking that hope token, you can store a number equal to your proficiency and then pick up any number of them and roll them when making an attack roll or damage roll that their value to their total. Oh, excellent. Oh my gosh. Oh, that is great. Basically, when you get hope tokens instead, you can kind of like save up this extra ability to strike and hit and connect, or an extra ability to deal extra damage. That is excellent. Oh my gosh.
Endure and
Slay.
all right.
Because let's be honest, BB totally slayed in the day. On a roll with hope, you may choose to place a single 1d6
Oh, I guess he
Slayer
explains it
die
too.
on this card instead of taking a hope. You can store a number of 1d6 Slayer dice equal to your proficiency and can pick up any number.
Heritage. Heritage is a combination of your ancestry and the community that you come from. So the ancestry involves, you know,
Kinda like background.
Fantasy.
Previous one was
ancestries, maybe
subclass
classics
choice.
that you come to
This
know,
is
the,
background.
Humans, which Bertrand Bell, I believe.
I'm a human.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm a boring human.
No, not boring. And we'll get to that in a second.
Thanks.
But you have the classic elves, dwarves. We also have some.
Hold on. Sorry, I gotta look at this real quick. So elves, during a long rest, you can drop into an elven trance as one of your 2 actions, and then you can a d8 equal to the stress that you have marked and clear all stress. And if any of those dice match, you also clear all hit points. Damn. These backgrounds, are they preset? Oh, I'm sorry. These heritages are races, are lineages, not backgrounds. I take that back. Yeah. So elves, you know, the classic human, elf, dwarf, perhaps a little bit of like a giant Goliath situation. What else is there? A gnome, a half elf, a halfling. Dwarves, when you take physical damage, you may spend 3 hope to only take half the damage instead. That's cool. And human, when you fail a roll that you utilize one of your experiences, you may spend a hope to re-roll, and you have to take the new result. That's pretty cool.
Some fun, weird ones to throw in there.
The demon, when you roll with fear, you may choose to mark a stress instead of GM gaining fear. That's cool. You kind of like stress yourself to stop the GM from gaining the, you know, because remember, the GM can use these fear tokens to do something like give an enemy a legendary action, or to give the wave of enemies an extra turn. Basically, another creature gets a turn. If I'm remembering correctly, I might be conflating some things. And you have advantage on rolls to intimidate other non-demon creatures. Cute. Fungrel. To speak with other Fungrel across distance to access their hive mind of information, you can make an instinct roll at character creation. Describe what ritual you must perform to tap into this connection. Cute, cute. And a Simia, you can take advantage on agility rolls that involve... So to recap, that's a d6 that you add to the roll that involve bouncing and climbing, and add +1 to your evasion at character creation.
Like the Fungrel, the fun little mushroom fungus folk. You have the Clanks, which are...
All right, decide who you were created by and for what purpose. When you generate your experiences at character creation, choose one that reflects this purpose and add +1 for it. Cute. And then the orc, when you would mark an armor slot, you get to roll a d6, and if you get 5 or 6, so a 33% chance you don't mark the armor slot, but you still reduce the incoming damage by your armor score. Excellent. That's pretty good.
The automaton robotic folk in a fantasy realm, and of course, ribbits, the
I think
cunning at the very least tiny frog person.
Everybody's made a ribbit.
They're pretty great. They're pretty great.
So far.
But going with Bertrand Bell, we'll go ahead and grab the human card here.
Oh yes.
So the ancestries and the communities both give you abilities depending on you know what ones you choose. What is the human ability here?
It says perseverance. When you fail a roll that utilized one of your experiences, you may spend a hope to re-roll, and you must take the new result.
Yeah. Now we get to choose your communities that you come from. And so we have a lot of choices here. They all kind of represent the communities that you grew up or shaped you. Here, you just
Okay, I think this one is the background.
Wanderborn,
So,
Underborn, and these can be applied to
so kind of like think like a hermit or a city guard or a spy or like the other backgrounds for 5th edition. Okay, so we've got Highborn, Ridgeborn, Seaborn, Underborn, Slyborn, think city, Wanderborn, Wanderer, Orderborn, Loreborn, and Wildborn. Oh my gosh. Highborn, you have advantage on any rolls you make when consorting with nobles, negotiating prices, or leveraging your reputation to get what you want. So you've got like a royal, like your prince heir to a throne, and you get an extra handful of gold at character creation. Being part of a highborn community means you were born into a life of elegance, opulence, and prestige within the upper echelons of society. Ridgeborn, being part of a ridgeborn community means you call the rocky peaks and sharp cliffs of the mountainside home. You'll have advantage, again, a d6 added to it, on traversing dangerous cliffs and ledges, so you would use that first dexterous ability, most likely. Navigating harsh environments and survival knowledge. Also gain +1 to your armor score, which they have to meet or beat with a d20. Or is that the armor, like the armor that you can... I actually forget. I'm sorry. Seaborn, being part of a seaborn community means you grew up on or near a large body of water. Once per session, when you take a short or long rest, you may take one additional downtime action. That's pretty good. Especially if you want to be a supportive character, you can always have that extra action to mend other people's armors. I wonder if mending your own armor and mending someone else's armor, I wonder if those count as the 2 actions you can take. I'll have to look into that. Underborn, being part of an underborn community means that you're from a subterranean society, low light living. When you're in an area with low light or heavy shadow, you have advantage on rolls to hide, investigate, or perceive details, basically an extra d6. So for Daggerheart, it sounds like you're definitely going to want to get your d12s and d6s. I know they allude to using other dice as well. Slyborn, being part of a Slyborn community means growing up in the underbelly of society surrounded by criminals and con artists. For those of you who are tieflings, orphan tieflings, which has surpassed human fighter as the most popular archetype to play, you'll want to be a Slyborn. As a scoundrel, you have advantage on any rolls where you're negotiating with criminals, detecting lies, or finding a safe place to hide. Wanderborn, being part of a Wanderborn community means that you were raised as a nomad. Actually, let me get my red arrow going here if I can find it so that you all can see basically what I'm talking about at all times. Okay, so right now I'm talking about the Wanderborn. I want to be Bloodborne. Being part of a Wanderborn community means that you were raised as a nomad, not having a permanent home, but experiencing a wide variety of cultures. So you add a nomadic pack to your inventory, and once per session, you may spend a hope to reach into the pack and pull out a common item that is useful in this situation. Like, oh yeah, I have this rope, I have this sleeping bag, I have this pickaxe, I have this sack of water. Very cute. Next up, we have the Orderborn. Being part of an Orderborn community means you were raised or reared in a place of great discipline or faith and uphold a set of principles that reflect your experience there. So for those of you who grew up in temples and church, as someone who's dedicated, you can record 3 sayings or values your upbringing instilled in you. And once per short rest, when you describe how you're embodying one of those principles through your current action, remember that's mending armor, restoring health, restoring some stress, or preparing, you may roll with a d20 as your hope die instead of a d12. Interesting. Next up, we have the Loreborn. Being part of a Loreborn community means you were brought up within a place that is favored strong academic or political prowess. So for the scholar background in 5th edition D&D, for example. As someone who is well-read, you have advantage on any rolls you make that deal with the history, culture, or politics of a prominent person or place. And last but not least, we have Wildborn. Being part of a Wildborn community means you were reared by a clan deep within the forest. As a Lightfoot, your movement is naturally silent. Gain advantage on any action rolls you make to move without being heard, so again a d6, and spend a hope, your d12, or the token that you get from rolling your d12s, to also grant this ability to an ally while they stay within very close range of you. Think about like a Pass Without Trace in D&D 5th edition.
To pretty much any community, specifically in a setting or a place you want to create in your mind. This is where your character came from. You can.
Nope.
What have you got it down to now?
Highborn, It says being part of a highborn community means you were born into a life of elegance, opulence, and prestige, usually within the upper echelons of the cities. But the other one that's interesting is slyborn, because it says being part of a slyborn community means growing up in the underbelly of a society surrounded by criminals and con artists. And it says scoundrel, you have advantage on any roles where you're negotiating with criminals, detecting lies, or finding a safe place to hide, which is pretty good since she's such a coward.
I mean, you tell me.
Let's do Slyborn just cause.
Okay.
I'm not saying this is canon. It's just what we're doing.
All right. Slyborn
We're building a
is-
character.
Exactly.
We're taking chances.
So between human and Slyborn, your ancestry and community, that is your heritage. So you get to write down on your character sheet under heritage.
Right.
You are a Slyborn human.
Slyborn. Humi.
Character traits are agility, which is your ability to sprint in and out of danger, to make big leaps from place to place. You have your strength, which is your ability to break, smash, push, lift, crawl, and hit things harder. Finesse, which is the ability to do more controlled, direct, dexterous sort of maneuverability.
Very specific.
As well as pinpointing and precision. Your instinct is your ability to kind of instinctually understand the world around you, being able to follow your gut, if you will. Your presence is your ability to affect and change people's opinion based on your presence, whether that be your charisma, whether that be your strength of words, your boldness, whether
Your
that
humor, your charm.
yeah, that's your presence.
Okay.
And then knowledge is the knowledge that you've accrued in the world around you. That can also help you to analyze challenges and details in the world around you and try and pick up the pieces of mysteries and puzzles. Now, across the board here, everyone starts with a number spread that you get to decide where they go. It is a -1.
We got our standard
2
array
zeros.
right here.
Okay.
2 +1s, and a +2.
Okay. So
Right.
I've got a 0 in knowledge, a 0 in finesse, +1 in agility, +1 in instinct, +2 in presence, and a -1 in strength.
Oh man, those
'Cause
years
he's
are
a
creeping
silver
up on
fox.
him.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough.
That's a tough go.
When that cartilage goes.
Okay, now that we got the traits figured out there, we move on to your character's damage thresholds. Now, the thresholds are unique to each class at level 1, and you can see here on the sheet under your hit points and stress. You have your minor threshold starts at 5, major starts at a 10, and severe at a 15. Based on certain domain card choices you make as you level up, and as well as points you get to spend as you level up, those can adjust and get higher and give you a better ability to soak damage. Like the minor damage threshold itself, any time you take damage, you look and see if it's above or below any some of the thresholds here. So if you take 7 damage, that's between your minor of 5
So then you would
and
mark
major of
1
10,
health.
which
We've
is
seen this
only
before.
equal to or higher than your severe damage threshold is 3 hit points. Things can get deadly pretty quick if you're not paying attention. But you don't have to do any math. When you take the damage, you just look to see where it lies and then mark the hit points accordingly.
Yes.
Now, every
Not
class
having
has
to
its
do
own
major
base
math is very
evasion.
nice.
Warriors are fairly combat centric. So they actually started at 10, which is not bad at all.
I can
So go
just put
ahead.
it in?
Yeah, just put a 10 right there. That can be adjusted based on different factors, like the equipment that you carry might weigh you down and lower your evasion. Certain effects in the game can improve or decrease that. Next up, we're going to go ahead and fill out your character's hope. So hope is an expendable resource and a constantly regenerating resource in Daggerheart. But you get to spend the hope on all sorts of abilities that you can use to help out your friends, as well as to fuel certain domain card abilities that you can choose as your character advances. So since hope can max out at 5, and it kind of regenerates fairly often, depending on how often you roll in your game, you don't want to sit on it too much. You kind of consider it a fluid resource. But you do start with 2, so you can go ahead and fill in 2 of those there. I'd recommend lightly, since you'll be erasing them and filling them in often through the game. So now that we've gotten your traits
Just
figured
don't
out
remember if
and
Daggerheart has been
damage
implemented in
thresholds,
Roll20
we can
yet.
Look into getting your equipment, starting with your starting weapons. So let me go ahead and get this equipment sheet here for you. This is the spread of basic equipment available to you at level 1. So any of these weapons, you're likely to choose. You can see beyond their names, it tells you what trait they utilize.
All right, so we've got some physical weapons, we've got some magical weapons, which I really like because there is I think dearth is the correct word I want to use here, a dearth of magical weapons. Like just simple magic damage, right? That you want to deal. Looks like D10s +2, D12s +2. Let's see if anything here jumps out at me. Like Warhammer reduces agility, Great Sword reduces agility, and then you get to roll an extra damage die and drop the lowest. That's epic. +1 to attack rolls with this weapon, nice. Mark stress to attack 2 targets in range quick. Ooh. Oh, that's good. I like you know, just in games like Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh, health is technically a resource, especially in Magic the Gathering, especially if you're playing like a deck that's either like black white or black white. Pretty much, like it's just like, you know, don't be too concerned about your health because you can use it. If you can use it, so you can use stress to attack two targets in. Oh my gosh, I got to make someone with dual short swords. -1 to evasion as longbow. What else is down here? The range is cool too, like the far, very close. So the halberd's got that extra range, not just melee. Glowing wings is very close. Short staff is close, not very close. And then wand, dual staff, returning blade. You can see they have the lower damage, the D8s, the D8s +2, instead of just like the D10s up here. Presence, melee, D10. You roll a D10 instead, and then, you know, presence is a term I'm not familiar with yet. And then this one also has kind of like massive, roll 1 extra damage die and drop the lowest. But unlike massive, you don't lose the agility for having the great staff. But that's pretty cool.
You get to add the bonuses or penalties of the trait that are present for each weapon based on how you did your trait spread.
Oh, dang, I was hoping to catch it. Okay.
That are present for each weapon based on how you did your trait spread.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Sorry, almost there. So we've got a round shield, adds 2 to your armor score. We have a tower shield. It kind of looks like you can use them to deal damage, D4, D6. So not much, but it's honest work. A -2 to evasion. So the tower shield, of course, you know, tower shield is huge. It goes up to your shoulders, your head. The dagger, +2 to primary weapon damage in melee. Oh, I love that because, you know, a lot of people do like dual wielding, and I know Stuck Up and I do based on that show we were watching, but like functionally having a shorter sword, such as the dagger, like an offhand dagger, is actually more realistically available and doable than 2 swords that are the same length. It's meant for things like disarming, for defending. Think like Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. And so I just like that the dagger kind of adds that extra damage. And looks like the short sword also does the same. Again, a sword that's typically shorter than the long sword or the mace or something. It's really nice to have that as offhand, and it's more accurate to history.
Spread. It tells you the range of them. You know, melee, very close, far, very far. You have your primary physical weapons and your primary magic weapons. Tells you how much damage they deal, the type, and then of course the burden.
Killer.
Yes, whether it should be one hand or two hand.
Arcane Gauntlet for Bertram. Yeah.
So is there a rapier there? The rapier, one-handed weapon. So you can go ahead and fill in that secondary starting weapon and an offhand. You have these like round shield. You can have a short sword.
All right, there's a little bit more here. We got the short sword, like I mentioned, but it's a D10 if you choose to attack with it. The whip is very close instead of melee, and the grappler is close, which is very interesting because it's got a little bit more range than the whip does. Whip crack marks stress to scatter enemies in melee back to close range. Oh, a little maneuvering on the battlefield of your enemies. Very nice. I like that too. Again, like the other ability, it's cool to use stress as an expendable resource. For extra bonuses on the battlefield. Hook. On a successful attack, you may also pull the target into melee with you. So they're originally close. You basically get to move them to like ranges closer. That's pretty cool.
A whip, grappler, hand crossbow.
Or just
nada. You know what? I'm just going to throw a dagger in there because I feel like he wants to play. Okay, great.
All right.
It'll put it in his belt. It'll be more show.
Perfect. Yeah, if he needs to. All right, and now that we have your starting weapons chosen, we can choose your starting armor. So here we have the starting armor for the game. We have leather armor, breastplates, chainmail,
+1, -1, armor score. Nice.
We did say full plate.
Is this him like beautiful choice?
Oh.
Why not? Big armor during rests. But you spend an armor slot to reduce the incoming damage by the amount of your armor score.
Okay.
Which means if you take
by the
10
amount of
damage
okay, that's what
and
armor
10
score
is your
is.
major threshold, you can mark an armor slot to reduce it and take it into a lesser threshold and thus take less hit point damage.
But look at full plate armor. That's 8.
It's 8, but it's also very heavy, which gives you -1 to evasion and agility. So
I know, but he would just look like a little bean in a spacesuit.
So it makes it more likely for them to hit you, but you'd be able to reduce more damage.
you got this. Bertrand's in full plate.
We're doing
for this
it.
particular evasion.
-2.
Easier to hit.
Oh, it feels gross.
It's okay, but you can take the hits a little better. However, you do still have 9 armor.
That's
You
true.
should go ahead and put in 9 armor for your armor score there. All right, and from there now we get to choose your starting inventory. So there's a secondary leveling sheet for each class here. This is the one for warrior.
Nice.
And so when you see up here where it says under inventory,
Forge,
you can
50 feet
write
of
down
rote,
the things
basic
that you
supplies,
take
handful of
automatically, and then a
gold,
few things to
minor health,
choose.
minor stamina
Sheet
potion.
for each class here. This is the one for warrior.
Nice.
And so you
Either
see
the
up here
drawing of a
where it says
lover
under
or a
inventory,
sharpening
you
stone. Very
write
nice.
down the things that you take automatically, and then a few things to choose to be
sweet.
added to that starting inventory.
Torch.
Doing your taxes, I'm grilling.
Yes.
So there's a list here of options you can choose from, and these, of course, are helpful for just quickly sussing out.
All right. So you can have clothes that are reinforced, weathered, patch. So, again, they are very narrative based here, and they're kind of making it easier for people who kind of, it's nice to the characters to be more than just like meat sticks damaging, like just weapons. Like, this is cute. Eyes like fire, lilacs, endless ocean, night, ivy, sea foam, earth, winter carnations. An attitude like a gladiator, a hired hand, a dedicated soldier, a bull, a hero. This is good for people like me who might not have something in mind for the character.
The character's basic physical description, like say clothes that are
Yeah, let's do royal more than sleek.
eyes that are like.
Let's do endless ocean.
Okay, great. And a body that's.
I mean, he's carved.
You can write some stuff in there too if it's not on there. But these are things you can pick from if you
Actually,
want.
I like Lanky. Let's do Lanky.
And of course, you are the color of.
He's falling snow in
his later years.
Yes.
It doesn't get outside very often. This boy.
No.
Okay. And an attitude like.
Oh, it's a hero, at least in his mind.
In his mind. Great. So now that we've finished up the character description for Bertrand Bell, we can jump to your actual domain card. This is the bread and butter of the character class that you chose. Every character class sits as an overlap between two different domain cards. The warrior sits between blade and bone. The blade domain focuses on combat, damaging attacks and spells, and just being like a really powerful and effective soldier in the front lines of battle. You're just good with weaponry and attacks and strategically doing the most damage as you can. Bone is about movement and tactical strategy and being able to adjust the battlefield and move through the battlefield quickly, deftly, and at your advantage. So these are kind of the overlaps you have. Now at level 1, you get to access 2 cards you get to choose of the 2 domains. And each domain has 3 cards of first level.
Oh, snap.
So you have 6 cards total to pick from. You have 3 blade cards that include retaliation, which is when you take damage from an enemy in melee range, you can mark a stress to immediately deal weapon damage to the creature at half proficiency rounded up. There's not good enough, which is the second blade first level ability. Anytime you roll your damage dice, you can re-roll.
I kind of like not good enough.
2s. If you do, you must take the new result, even if it's a 1 or 2.
Some people love those. I'm allergic to those things. I like the 1 sometimes.
Well, there
we
you
can
go.
get rid of that one.
Okay, so not good. Not good enough is not good enough for you. The last one we got under blade is whirlwind. When you make a successful attack on an enemy in melee range, you may also spend a hope to use that roll against every other enemy in melee.
Ooh, nice.
Range. But that roll you made is now effectively put against all enemies that are around you, and then any that it does succeed against, they take half damage.
That's pretty good, especially I feel like combined with that ability that we saw with the card where you can add the extra stored d6s as damage.
I got it.
So it's
Well,
not
that's actually pretty good if you wade into somebody and it's like 1 hit.
You can choose 2 of the spread, meaning you can choose 2 bone and ignore all of blade, or 2 blade and ignore all of bone, or 1 from each.
Okay.
You just have 6 to choose from and 2 that you get to pick.
Okay.
So on the bone side of things, you have nimble. It says while this card is in your loadout, meaning it's a card that you've chosen for your character to be active, you add your agility score to your evasion. The second bone ability at level 1 is I see it coming. When you're targeted by a ranged attack, mark a stress to roll your hope die, which is a d12.
Ooh, that's pretty cool.
Of your duality dice, and increase your evasion against.
Oh,
the
that's
attack
really
by its
cool.
value. The last one you got
I'm
here is
definitely
called
choosing I
Deft
see it
Maneuvers.
coming.
Deft maneuvers is you can spend a hope to move anywhere within far range without making an agility roll to get there. So normally in the
Ooh, I
in
like the last
Daggerheart,
one
if
too.
you move beyond close range, which is like roughly 30 or so feet, you have to roll an agility roll to get there. So with this Deft maneuvers, you can spend a hope to go anywhere within far range and not have to worry about a roll at all.
This makes full plate a little bit more palatable, the death maneuvers, but I think I'm really feeling I see it
Good point.
coming and retaliation.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a solid spread there. All right, cool. So next up, we get to go through background questions for your character. Now, background questions are not absolutely necessary. A lot of people who especially have experience in RPGs, you have a strong idea of your backstory and how you want to define your character. But these are great questions to either layer on top of that and help maybe think of things about your character's history that you hadn't before, or if you have no idea and you just want to make it up on the spot or find something to jump off of and then build off of, these are great questions
Who taught you to fight? Why did they stay behind when you left home? Someone defeated you in battle years ago, left you to die. Who was it, and why did it feel like such a betrayal? And what legendary place have you always wanted to visit? Why is it so
Kind
special?
of start that internal
Cute.
conversation.
That last one
So for
is
here,
one of my
backup questions
backgrounds.
include, who taught you to fight, and why did they stay behind when you left home
If he came from to be able to
and left you to die?
say I.
Right. Next up, we can generate your character's experiences. Experiences are things in the world, experiences that your character has had that's defined their skills and abilities, the things that they're generally better at, or at least more trained in than the other average person. So here on your character sheet, it says experiences. You start with 2, and you get to add a +2 to one of the experiences and the +1 to the other. Now, these experiences, they can be somewhat broad about your background, like stuff like charlatan or social climber could be options. And what you can do as a player is you can spend a hope to apply that bonus to a role that fits within that experience. So for charlatan, you're trying to convince somebody, do this deal where obviously this is extremely expensive gold that requires top dollar, regardless of the pyrite type of materials of it. You might say, well, I'm going to go ahead and use my charlatan experience to add my +2 to that. So you spend a hope, and you get to add that bonus to your roll. So
I as you were saying it, I came up with the phrase, "Do you know who I am?" So a +2 to like anything that might be saying that he was an important part of Vox Machina, or all the beasts that he's slain, or the countries that he's visited, or maybe the royals or dignitaries that he has befriended, and maybe leveraging and applying like intimidation and pressure on anyone he might be interacting with.
That's cool. I love that. So yeah, like they're meant to be open and flexible and applying to narrative moments that make sense should both the player and the GM agree upon it. It just costs a hope to do so. So it's another use of that resource as you go. And you get more experiences as you level up, and you can apply bigger bonuses to the experiences you have. So those are your character's experiences. Now that we have the bulk of your character pretty much ready to go, now we get to write in your pronouns, and now we get to work on character connections with other characters in the group. So these are also questions that you don't necessarily have to follow in your game.
See,
For
this,
players, it's a fun
as a
way
brief aside,
to
this
have a
would
group
have
that
been
starts
easier
with
for
some
me
dynamics and
for
relationships.
the group
So,
that I
if you're doing
run
a
with
session where
Stuckum,
they're all meeting for the first
considering
time, these
the
connections
one
might not be as important
player
then,
that
and you
used
kind of
to
apply down the road, but these help kind
game
of
with
start
us.
the game with those connections.
It's
already
nice to
set.
have
So you
a
would pick a particular
preset,
person at
like
the table and find an
pre-existing
agreed upon link.
connection,
You
so
can
that I
throw
don't
it
have to
out
try to
openly, and somebody can take that thread if they have an idea and they can
Nice.
answer that, or you can choose
connections
somebody and put them in the spot.
among
Like,
the players.
how did we meet before this?
We got in a bar brawl a month ago, and afterwards we went to the next bar and drank away our brews.
Right, became
Okay,
drinking
like,
buddies after this one thing,
yeah.
and you both write that down, and already out of that one question, you have like an actual pre-game moment that you can fall back on of knowing each other, and that becomes a thread out of the gate. So with that, the connections are done, and as is level 1 Bertrand Bell. So let's say that Bertrand's got some adventuring out of his system for a bit, and he gets to level up. Let's see what that looks like. So let's go ahead and level up Bertrand to level 2. At level 2, you take an additional experience. So
You can make him another one? Need more fiber.
the creative possibilities there.
That's a good one.
That's +1?
It's a +1.
Okay, great.
When you level up, record on your character sheet, then choose 2 available options from the list below and mark them. There are 3 slots you can mark to increase 2 unmarked character traits by 1 and mark them. So you can increase 2 of them for 1 box.
Let's definitely get strength out of the -1s.
So strength goes up to a 0, and then you get to add a +1 to any of the other ones.
Amazing. Let's do finesse and get him up.
And you get to mark the
We all
circles
became
next to them,
drinking
which
buddies
means
on our
they
third
cannot
try.
be
Yeah.
increased again until you move on to the next tier of leveling at level 5.
Got it.
So you can do another box.
Let's see, permanently add 1 HP slot, stress slot. 2 experiences get to go up by 1. Proficiency gets to go up by 1. Extra armor slot, 1 to evasion. Major damage threshold by 2. Minor damage threshold by 1. Those are pretty good. And then your severe damage threshold goes up by 2. That's cool. And a new domain deck.
And choose 2 other ones to level up, or you can permanently add 1 hit point slot and have a little more hit points. You could permanently add 1 stress slot to have a little more stress to endure. You could increase 2 experiences by 1 to buff up those bonuses. You can increase your proficiency by 1. And proficiency increases the damage that weapons do by an additional die, as well as some abilities.
Get
whenever
out
you
of
do
here.
Damage.
It's
Done.
I don't know if it's
You didn't
on
see
his
anything
existing
else.
sheet,
Alright,
but it's
and
kind of
then
like
at
the
end,
guide. It's
increase
probably
your
on the
severe
back or
damage
something.
threshold by +2, and choose
Now that
the
he's leveled up,
domain
every time he
card
levels
of
up
your
to
level
2,
or lower.
3, or
So,
4,
there's
then he'll
good
do one of
access
those.
to the bone and blade cards that you didn't pick last time, but now you have access to some higher level ones. So the 2 new bone cards you can pick from are Ferocity. When you cause an enemy to mark any hit points,
Yeah, I don't think
spend
we
a
actually
hope to
finished this
temporarily
video back in
increase your
March.
invasion by the number of hit
I think we
points you
paused
dealt.
and went on to do
Strategic
other
approach is
things.
the other option. After a long rest, place a number of tokens equal to your knowledge trait. Points. Spend a hope to temporarily increase your invasion by the number of hit points you dealt. Strategic approach is the other option. After a long rest, place a number of tokens equal to your knowledge trait.
And then when they move into range, you can make an attack at advantage, so add a d6. You don't add a character token to the action tracker for this attack, so it's harder for the GM to get moves and or fear die from your specific action, or you can just add 1d8 to your damage. What's your knowledge trait? That's a good combo.
0 with a minimum of 1. So you get 1.
I'm learning.
I know, you'll get there. But you can spend these tokens when you make an attack roll to make the attack an advantage. You get to add a d6 to the roll.
Oh man.
You can add a character token to the action tracker for this. Not add a token.
Or add 1d8 to your damage.
Yeah. Or from Blade at level 2, you have a Soldier's Bond. Once per long rest, if you compliment someone or ask them
Oh,
about
that's
something they're good
cute.
at, you may both take 3
Like a
hopes.
positive
The other
affirmation,
option
but
is reckless.
mechanized.
You may always mark a stress to take advantage on an attack roll against a target. You get to
Oh,
add a D6
oh,
to
that's
your
good too. I
attack
would take those
roll at the
two.
cost of a stress anytime
Well,
you make it.
I'm gonna
I
take
think those
the
would
Soldier's
belong
Bond.
to different characters, but
Wait, I changed my mind. Give me.
Whirlwind, these boxes of your choice, but you can't increase the ones that you've already marked.
Right, it has to be new ones.
Yeah.
Well, knowledge is getting out of the 0.
Going for an even spread here for Bertrand.
Yes,
I like that.
100%. And let's get agility. I'm gonna do main.
By 2 again. And get to choose another domain card from the previous levels if you want to. So you still have access to the
And then
level 1 and level 2 blade cards or any of the bone cards you had previously,
Uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
the new
Thank you for the
level 3
compliment.
ones,
Go ahead and take
which
3 hope
for Blade
tokens.
are versatile fighter. You can choose to use the character trait of your choice on an equipped weapon rather than the trait it calls for.
Ooh.
And then when dealing damage, you can mark a stress to take the
Ooh,
maximum.
to take the
value of
maximum
one
value. That's
damage
definitely
dice
worth the
instead of
stress.
You got Scramble, which is once per short rest. When an enemy in melee would deal damage to you, you can avoid the damage.
Oh,
entirely
that one's
with
good
the same amount
too.
of melee range.
They just riff.
How many
Yeah,
of
I
these
like
do we
it.
choose?
This is
2?
great.
It's pretty fun.
It's so hard for me to
And then for
choose.
the,
That last one's really
bone,
good.
You have Brace. Whenever you use an armor slot to reduce incoming damage, you may also spend any number of hope. For every hope you spend, reduce the incoming damage by the value of your
Ooh, so
proficiency.
that'll stack.
Or Tactician. When you help an ally, which you can spend a hope at any time to help an ally and describe how you help them to add the advantage
D8
D6
instead of a
to their roll.
D6?
The
That's
advantage
cute.
die you roll, however, is a D8. So you're better at helping people as a tactician,
It's a tag team
whenever
role
you
that
make a
was
tag
talked about
team
there.
which is a fun thing you can do in the game by spending 3 hope, and you and another person can team up your maneuvers together.
Nice.
Whenever you do that, you roll a D20 for your hope die instead of the D12.
But I'm selfish, so I'm gonna go with scramble. Permanently add 1 hit points.
It's a very
We'll read.
lots, which is we now
This
and
is the best character you've ever seen. You can just say it.
we have to redirect it to direct. When you successfully evade a ranged attack, you may roll a number of D6s equal to your proficiency. If any of them are a 6, you can mark a stress to redirect.
Ooh,
it to
redirecting
instead
attacks,
damage
very
an
nice.
enemy.
Dang.
And the thing is, we're only looking at these
or
2
boost.
domains. There's
If you
like
have an ally in close range of you,
7
you
other
can mark a
domains or
stress to
something.
boost off of them and into the air to perform an aerial attack at an enemy within far range. You essentially like
Ooh.
speedball special yourself across the battlefield, which gives you advantage on the attack, and you get to add a D10 to the damage. Then you end in melee range of the target. You get literally boost off and thrown towards an
You can
opponent.
just see scream.
Focus towards a single target.
Once per short rest, choose that target. Until you attack another target, you defeat the creature or the battle ends at +1 to your proficiency.
Choose that target.
Nice.
Until you attack another target,
Reminds me of the
you defeat the creature or the battle
Revenants
ends. You add
from
+1 to
5th
your
edition.
proficiency.
Whoa. So this would be 3d8.
Now, it'll be 3d8 against that one
That
target
one.
until you either defeat them, are defeated, or you choose to hit something else.
So good.
Or fortified armor. Increase your armor total by +2, and while this card is in your loadout, and then once per short rest, you can use an armor slot. without
Ooh,
it.
that's pretty nice,
So it
especially
kind
for
of gives
people who
like a
have
phantom 5th armor slot.
armor.
Already really stacked on armor.
We need
let's
these
see
cards in
what
my
else.
hand to
This
understand.
is
And that's
the-
actually the point of these. You will have these next to you. So instead of D&D where it's just typically just a character sheet and maybe some dice, you will have your character sheet, and these domain cards, someone has pointed out, is kind of like what they're trying to like they're swapping. You can swap them out. They're your bread and butter. You'll have these next to you.
Bertrand Rocket, you were talking about.
Yes, Bertrand Rocket. Thank you for reminding me.
So with those choices, at level 4, as Bertrand Bell, you have Retaliation, domain cards in your loadout, and 5 is the maximum that you can have in your loadout. Whenever you take a rest, you can change out cards. So at level
there you
5
go.
and higher, you're going to have one
You
card
can
that
have
can
5 in your
put in
loadout.
vault. However, you see this little number in the upper right-hand corner.
I do.
That's the recall cost. That's how much stress it takes to swap it with the card in your vault. So even the cards that you don't pick for your loadout, you know, the cards that are more utility focused, you can leave them out. And then if a situation happens where it's really useful, and you're like, oh, I wish I put that in my loadout, you can spend the number of stress to swap it in with one of the cards.
On a rest, mark a stress.
You can swap it for free on a rest, but you can do it in the moment.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so typically, even for spellcaster classes in D&D 5th edition, you can pray your spells in after your long rest, but then you not in the heat of the moment. I mean, you can in 2024 with Divine Intervention kind of use a spell that you don't like that's 5th level or lower as a cleric, that you might not have prayed in. But this lets you do it like even though you chose like this combat spell, you can like stress yourself, which again, an expendable resource that you can then, you know, clear with a D4 on a short rest. You can have access to those abilities in the heat of the moment. So you have access to all of them that you've had access to, even though you've got your main 5. Oh, it just costs some stress.
That adds
Excellent.
a lot of value to one that has a 0 stress.
Exactly.
Ooh,
So some of the 0 stress cards might
That is
be
a
not quite as
fantastic
powerful as other comparable ones, but being 0 stress,
economical
you can kind of keep them out
system.
of your loadout at the higher levels and just swap them in if you need it.
That's pretty great.
You know, you got options at your disposal.
Okay. All right.
It's a pretty solid build. This would be a fun combatant, I think. Bertrand in his full plate glory, his odd
Cosmonaut
days
Bertrand.
building character creation process of Bertrand Bell and Daggerheart.
All right. Yes, that is it for this video. Sorry for just pretty much forwarding through the embellishment that they were doing for his particular character. But yeah, we were able to watch both how to play Daggerheart and then get through the good stuff in how to make a character. I am very excited. All right, I'm going to go ahead and take us back, those of us watching live in the present, to the other screen. But those of you watching in the future via YouTube, I hope you all have a good night, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. And I will catch you next time.